Welcome to Village. Can we give the band a hand one more time? Man, wasn't that good this morning? One of my requests when we were planning this series, like, all right, here's the deal. We can do this back in the day series, but there's got to be some 80s music thrown in. And they got it this morning, man. And if it didn't make you happy, that made me happy. So it was great to see. I loved it. Maybe if today's your first time here at Village, we're grateful for whoever invited you. Those are great people. And maybe you're wondering, it looks like a yard sale from the 1980s is about to happen here. And after the 11 o'clock service, that is true. If you want to come and just grab something, it's actually, you can get whatever you want up here for the most part of this wonderful stuff that we can still use, like the box TV with the fully functional antenna. By the way, I've heard some of you, and Andrew, we've talked about this, refer to it as an antenna. Antenna? How many of you use antenna? How many of you say that? Antenna? A couple of us? Okay. We'll just agree to disagree. And Andrew he's like, it's antenna. I was like, no, it's antenna. So we've gone back and forth on that. But no, it's all available after the 11 o'clock service. We're actually concluding a series today called Back in the Day. We've been doing some reminiscing. We've been doing some remembering. And the thing is, we all have back in the day stories. And we've all learned under back in the day stories that our grandparents and our parents had back in the day stories. You know, back in my day, we used to walk 5 miles uphill and then 5 miles further uphill to go to school both ways, right? Remember those stories? And believe it or not, we have some back in the day stories too. Like when my kids start talking about middle school, and it's like, well, back in my day, we didn't call it middle school. We called it junior high school, and it was just 7th and 8th grade. And all of a sudden I'm done talking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I sound like my parents, right? That you got that going on. We all have these back in the day stories. And back in the day, we can tend to over-romanticize. We can tend to look back with nostalgia and see that things have changed. There's no better indicator of this than our fashion sense, right? Than our fashion sense. And back in the day, we had some interesting fashion sense, didn't we? So I'm going to take a walk down memory lane with you this morning. And what we did secretively is we asked all of you to submit pictures of your spouse in back in the day attire, right? So you're all about to be up. I'm just kidding. We didn't do that. Somebody like, oh no, we didn't do that. These are just random pictures of back in the day attire. And we're going to start with everyone's favorite, the fanny pack. Right? The fanny pack. Look at that guy right there. He is working that fanny pack. Of course, the fanny pack, it would latch in the back around your fanny. It was more of a gut pouch, right? I mean, it sits on your gut there, right? It's a gut pouch. And you put your ID in it. You put your wallet. You put your keys. Look, he's having trouble putting his cell phone in there because you remember the 1980s, cell phones were this big, right? Hello? No, he's not here, right? And then it cost you $50 to talk on him. So fanny pack was a big part of our ensemble back in the day. Ladies, do you remember the jellies, right? Jelly shoes or slippers or whatever you might classify them as. Every girl when I was growing up had jellies, right? They all wore their jellies. I think my wife still owns a pair of jellies. But jelly shoes, we love those. Then there were ripped jeans. Right? Ripped jeans. When I was coming up, my parents would get on to me for having rips in my jeans. Right? My friends were all doing it, Mom. No, we pay good money for those jeans. And so what I would do is I'd wear them outside and try at any time I could to slide, right, to get that hole going. Like, oh no, look, Mom, it just happened. Right? My pants got a hole in them. Now you could go to your favorite store and buy ripped jeans. So how about that? I guess, circular fashion there. This is one of my favorites. How many of you boys remember and girls remember the rat tail? The rat tail. All right, now here's moment of truth. How many of you had a rat tail? Ryan, you just made my day. Can I tell you something? But here's what you should know about this man right down here. You can trust him because he just owned up to that in front of all of you, right? Highly trustworthy. Ryan Hood right there having a rat tail back in the day. I was thankful my parents never let me have a rat tail. I never really wanted one, but they would have not flown in our house growing up. Growing up, we would wear our Jams shorts and Zubaz shorts. Remember Jams, shorts, and Zubaz? Any of you guys around here wore your Jams? Of course, Jams, it turned out the EPA would tell us years later that those actually burned out your retinas if you look too closely at Jams shorts. But we wore those, and Zubaz, I mean, what were we thinking? So there's some more. Coca-Cola clothing. You remember Coca-Cola clothing? How many of you had a Coca-Cola polo shirt? Just some. I thought we had more than that. Man, I did too. I wanted one. My friends had it. I was like, I got to get Coca-Cola clothing. You thought they just did Coke. No, they did clothing as well. And ladies, we'll pick on you one more time. Look at that. Look at that. Big bangs. If she's related to any of you, I'm sorry. This is a random picture off the internet. Look at that hair. Right, look at that. The bangs, man. Look at those big bangs. I mean, it's serving as a hairstyle and a windbreaker, right? In case there's a flood, her hair will stop it. You imagine how strong her neck must have been for all the product that's in that hair? I mean, doing some exercises with the neck that you do with football players. Man, look at those big bangs. We have this goofy fashion from back in the day, this fashion sense. Maybe you can relate to this one. When I was a little boy, we go to church once a week. That's what we did on Sunday. And as most little boys during that time, I had my clothes I wore during the week, and then I had my church clothes. Right, I had my church clothes, some khaki pants, a polo shirt that probably only got worn once a week. That whole year, I'd wear it once, then put it back. Wear it once, put it back. I don't know if I ever washed them. Those are my church clothes. And of course, with your church clothes, you had to have your church socks. Right? You remember your church socks, they were black or blue to match whatever you were wearing for the day. And every once in a while, I'd come home from church, and I'd change out of my khakis and my polo, my church clothes, and I'd put on probably my Jam shorts, and I'd leave my church socks on, right? Just randomly, I'd leave them on, run around the house. And my mom would always shame me a little bit. She'd be like, "What are you doing with your church socks on and those shorts? You look like a what? Old man." Right? You look like an old man running around with your black socks and your Jams or Zubaz shorts, whatever you were wearing there. And so I'd feel great shame, then I would go and change my socks. All right? Well, about 10 years ago, my brothers-in-law went on a trip with my father-in-law, and they came back just telling the funniest stories about him wearing his black socks with his shorts when they go out on the town. Okay? So that the trend still held. What I got a big complaint about is today, have you noticed the fashion that our kids are wearing? They're wearing black socks with their shorts, man, and it's cool now. Where do I file the protest? What happened when I was a kid? I would have been the coolest kid around because I'd have my church socks and my Zubaz shorts on. Man, this fashion has come all the way around, hasn't it? See, because today really is better than back in the day. And we've been talking about this idea that we all have a back in the day story. Well, we look back nostalgically. We look back romantically. We will look back with these rose-colored glasses like, oh, back in the day. It was so great back in the day. And when we do this too often, we will shortchange what's right in front of us. That today's not so bad as it is either, right? But if we're always looking back, we can't take time to assess what's right in front of us. And that as a Christian here in this place this morning, that you have access to a relationship with God the Heavenly Father through His Son Jesus right here, right now. And that is a great thing. And when we're always looking back culturally, through life, through spiritually, and we're missing out on what's right in front of us, that's not a good place to be. And so there's this book about 3/5 of the way through the New Testament called Hebrews, and we've been walking through Hebrews during the month. And this author is writing to these Jewish men and women, students who have decided to follow Jesus. All right, these Jewish folks who come from this incredible back in the day story. There's this rich history, this beautiful religion that they years and years and years and history after history after history is part of this religion. And they're trying to figure out, how do I follow Jesus right now and have this back in the day as well? How do those jive together? And the author of Hebrews, which we'll say this, the author of Hebrews, we don't know who the author is. Some think Paul, some think a guy named Apollos, some think a lady named Priscilla. We really don't know. But the author writes this beautiful, really, it's a treatise on what it looks like to follow Jesus coming out of the Jewish faith. And if you were to boil Hebrews down to one main idea, the main idea is this: that Jesus is better. Jesus is better than the sacrificial system you grew up with in the Hebrew faith. Jesus is better than angels. Jesus is better than Moses, better than the temple system. He's better than all the things that went into that religion you took part in back there. That Jesus, as you follow what was called the way at the time, as you follow this way, Jesus is better. That today is better because Jesus is with you. And what you have today is better than what you had back then. So there's this tension going on. And we can all be guilty of this kind of thinking, that back in the day was better. When my first son was born, we have two boys, and when Lane was born, we had taken him to church or something, some kind of function, and senior adults are holding him and cuddling, seeing the baby, loving the baby, all that. And then someone made this comment after they had held the baby, and they said, "Why would you want to bring a child into this world?" I don't think they thought I was listening, but I heard it. And I remember thinking, that's futile thinking, right? That's back in the day thinking. That's thinking that's kind of given up on what's right in front of you, right? And so that's the tension that this author writes Hebrews to these folks who are struggling to find, how does my faith in Jesus fit in with what I had back in the day? And so we're going to look at Hebrews 12 this morning. If you've been in church for any period of time, this is probably a well-known passage to you, verses 1 through 3. And we're going to tether ourselves there. We're actually going to look ahead of right before that as well. But Hebrews 12 is part of the section of Hebrews where the author spent 9 chapters telling us why Jesus is better than this, and that. And then 10 through 13, they walk out the practical implications. What does it look like then to follow this Jesus? And so we're going to pick up in verse 1 of chapter 12. If you have your Bibles with you, you want to follow along, it will be on the screen as well, okay? So Hebrews 12, verse 1 starts this way. Therefore, right? Therefore. Okay. Maybe you're like me and you grew up with English teachers or Sunday school teachers or someone telling you, what do you do anytime you see a therefore? You need to know what the therefore is what? Therefore, right? So what's it there for? What's the author trying to tell us? But to know what the therefore is there for, we have to go back to see what they're talking about. All right, see what they're talking about. And so back in Hebrews 11, Andrew walked us into Hebrews 11 last week about how there's a God who reveals himself to us. And then we have faith, we believe, and then we act upon God's revealing himself to us. And then in Hebrews 11, the author kind of lists a hall of fame of faith, of these Jewish men and women who've done these incredible things, believing God for things they haven't seen. These heroes like Abel and Noah and Abraham and Joseph and Moses, these big wigs. Like if you were a Jewish boy at that time, you probably didn't collect baseball cards. You might have collected cards of the Hebrew Hall of Faith, right? These incredible men and women who've done these incredible things. He says, therefore, these people live these incredible lives. But that wasn't all. It was those people who everyone knew about, kind of the Jewish celebrities of faith. But then there are also these other folks. And at the end of chapter 11, the author describes these folks who lived their lives by faith. When it says, there were others, in verse 35, who were tortured. Some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted. By the way, that word there, I don't think it quite means the same as the way we use it today, right? That for 21st century American Christian life, this persecution here referring to these people and the hardships they had gone through, the world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. There's that better word. Again, that these folks, these heroes of faith that you all know, but also these everyday men and women who went about living out their faith, suffering greatly, right? They were commended for their faith. You have this incredible back in the day for you, right? This incredible foundation of your faith that you can lean on. And because of that, there are implications for how we live today. Because of these incredible people, because of the incredible lives they lived, these ordinary people believing in an extraordinary God. Because of that, therefore, he says, therefore, since we have this great cloud of witnesses, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, since you have this massive cheering section of people who have been there, who have done that, of people who know what it's like to face hardship, of people who know what it's like to face difficulty, because these people are in your corner like Mick was to Rocky. Go get 'em, Rock, right? They're on your side because they're there for you, right? Therefore, since we have this surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, they're going to tell us what the implications are for that. So let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Because you have this incredible back in the day story. This incredible back in the day story. And by the way, for many of us, that back in the day, we might not say, well, yeah, Moses is in my corner, but we remember a mother or a father or a pastor or a teacher or a coach, someone who has encouraged you that you are today where you are because of who they were to you, because we have this great cloud of witnesses. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And I love the move that the author makes here, that they divide these two, everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And what they're saying is that there's things that hinder, but there's also sin, right? Too often we're like, well, it's sin that comes between me and God. Well, not always, according to this. Sometimes it may just be the things that are hindering you, right? And maybe they're decent things, but are they hindering us from being the people God has made us to be? Consider this example. Have you ever seen a hairy swimmer, like in the Olympics? Like a swimmer who's just body-haired out the wazoo. Have you ever seen that? Right? Maybe in the late 70s, early 80s. Michael Phelps doesn't look like Bigfoot, does he? No, Michael Phelps looks like he was just born. I mean, that dude, there's nothing on him, right? When he jumps in the water, he's a hairless torpedo, isn't he? Just pew, shooting through that water. Do you know why you don't see hairy swimmers? Because apparently that hinders them, right? That hinders them. I don't know how that works, but you don't see hairy swimmers because that hinders them. When they jump in that water, something about that hairless torpedo, it makes them go faster. It hinders them. And the author's saying there are things that can hinder us, not necessarily sin, but they can hinder us. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's how we use our time. Maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's who we're spending time with. That there are things that can hinder us when it comes to pursuing who God has made us to be. And then there's the sin that so easily entangles. Again, I love the phrasing here. The sin that so easily entangles. I don't know about you, but I don't have to get all Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail when it comes to sin. Like, I don't have to go searching for it like that. It just seems to find me, right? Have you been there? It just seems to find me. All it takes is a thought, right? And I can get there. Sin that so easily entangles, right? It's just easy. I don't have to pursue it. It is just to be found. Other New Testament writers would describe this as we fall into sin, right? It's that easy just to fall into it. Sin that so easily entangles. And I love the phrasing there, the entangles, right? I was mowing the grass last week, and I was mowing under a tree, and all of a sudden, I mowed through a spider web, right? And some of you are just getting the creeps right now, and I am too, just thinking about it. But it had to be the biggest spider web in the history of man. I mean, like Lord of the Rings type spider web I'm walking through. And you know what we do when we walk through a spider web? We become like kung fu, like, oh, we're just crane kicking all over the place. It's like, get off of me, right? You know that feeling, that sensation when you walk through a spider web? And there's two reasons why we do this. One is because there's a spider that made that web. And it's like, oh my gosh, just don't want that thing on me. But two, it's just to get that sensation of that web off of you. You have to give it up to spiders. They are incredible architects, aren't they? They are good at what they do. And this is what the author's saying. That's what sin does. It entangles, right? You just walk through, bam, there it is. And they're not under the delusion that this is something that you just whip on Monday, right? What are you doing tomorrow? Well, I'm going to destroy the sin in my life, right? Or I'm going to throw off everything that hinders, and one day I'm done, right? Well, that was Monday. Let's see what Tuesday holds. They're under no illusion that this is just something that takes place one day, because the author goes on to say, And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. You know what races you don't need perseverance for? Quick ones, right? Fast races, right? 40-yard dash. Oh, I got to persevere, right? It's just, you're gone. That he's saying that life is not some kind of 40-yard dash where we're looking for a 4.240. That's not what it's like. That life is more a long view. It's a marathon, right? It is that long cross-country run. You don't need perseverance for 40-yard dashes. You do, though, for cross-country. And my son this past week my oldest finished his middle school cross-country campaign. And they ran this past Tuesday and finished up. And I've learned a lot watching him these past few years run cross-country. I am not much of a cross-country runner, as you can tell. I'm not much of a runner, period. But he really enjoyed it. And I found that some of us we enjoy running, right? There's something interesting about that. But there's a way to properly run cross-country. And you'd watch as these meets would start, that if one kid would just shoot out like a gun to start the race, you can guarantee that kid, the next time they come around and you see them, you know where that kid's probably at? 50th, 60th. Why? Because they haven't mastered persevering. They were great at starting, but they couldn't keep going. The cross-country, this long run, is all about the pace. Right? It's all about the pace that you set. Did you know that there's actually a proper way to breathe when you run these long distances? Never knew that. There's a proper way to tie your shoes when you run these races. I never knew that. But there are things we can do to help us in this long race of life that we are running. We need perseverance, right? For this race that is marked out for me, that's marked out for you. Because of this great cloud of witnesses, because of these people cheering us on, let's throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let's run with perseverance, right? With go-gettedness, this race that's marked out for us. And they continue, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. Let's run this race with perseverance marked out for us. We've fixed our eyes on Jesus. He is our focus. The pioneer, some translations say the author and perfecter of our faith. The one who has blazed the trail for us. This Jesus who is better. We focus on him as we run. Jesus in front, Jesus in front, Jesus in front. And here's why we do that. We do that, the author says, because Jesus, for the joy set before him, endured the cross, scorning its shame. And I don't know about you, but when I think of the cross and the crucifixion and what Jesus went through for me, for you, I don't think of joy. Right? I picture agony. I picture suffering. Right? But it says that Jesus, for the joy set before him, because Jesus knew on the other side of that cross was life for himself and for you and for me and for all of us, right? On the other side of that cross, for the joy set before him. Fix your eyes on this Jesus who endured the cross, scorning its shame. And then he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. This is interesting language here, this sat down at the right hand of God. That's to sit down in those days from a place of authority meant that it was finished, right? It was complete. The task was over, right? And he sits down in authority there. The right hand is always a place of authority. Jesus sits down, completed his work in authority, right? With God at the throne of God. Fix your eyes on this Jesus, right? As we run this race marked out for us, keep him in front, focusing on this Jesus, who he is and what he has done. And then the passage ends with this. It says, consider him, Jesus, who endured such oppression from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Consider this Jesus, right? Think on him. Recognize what he has done. Remember him who endured such oppression from sinners, who endured the cross. Remember him so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Because the goal is to persevere, right? To persevere, to not grow weary, to not lose heart. And see, this is where some of us can be lured back into back in the day thinking, right? That it was better then, is because we are growing weary and maybe we're losing heart. And it's easy to say, well, back then was so much better, right? That we're growing weary and we've lost heart. And we have probably some great reasons for that. Maybe you're tempted to grow weary and lose heart because of loss, because you've lost loved ones, right? That back in the day was better because they were with you. And it's easy to look at today and think, oh, I just don't know if I can do it. Right? To grow weary, to lose heart, to not persevere. Maybe we do this because of loss of relationship. Like that relationship's not the same. That relationship isn't what it was. And we find ourselves growing weary or losing heart because of the loss of that relationship. Maybe it was the loss of opportunity. Right? That's like, if just back in the day I'd have done A, then B would have happened. Right? That Y, that Z would have happened. Maybe you see back in the day thinking because you mourn loss of opportunity or loss of loved ones or loss of relationships. These are all valid reasons to be tempted to grow weary and to lose heart, to not persevere. Right? They're all valid reasons. And to this, the author of Hebrews would say, remember Jesus. Fix your eyes on him. Right? Fix your eyes on him. Others of us may be sitting around this morning and are finding ourselves ready to lose heart, ready to grow weary because of just the cultural climate we find ourselves in this dog eat dog eat dog eat dog culture that seems to be just rising to the top for some reason of what's going on around us. This culture of demonizing and enemy making that draws lines in the sand and says, if you don't think like me, then you're wrong and I hate you. Right? It's easy to grow weary and to lose heart when this is what we're surrounded by every single day. We can grow weary. We can lose heart. But the author of Hebrews says, we have this great cloud of witnesses. These incredible people of faith, right? The names that you know, Abraham, Noah, Joshua, Joseph, Moses, all them. But also the names you don't know. The ones who suffered, the ones who were persecuted, the ones who were mistreated. You don't know their names, but they are on your side as well. And those names of people, right? Those names of people that you don't even remember in your own life that have encouraged you. They're there cheering for you, urging you on to make it to the finish line, right? Surrounding you with encouragement and enthusiasm. I don't know if you've ever taken the big step back picture of your life, the 30,000 foot view, and thought, man, I've had so many people that have encouraged me to this moment. And then we would keep our eyes focused on the one who has gone before us, on Jesus, who has done what we couldn't do, what we were powerless to do. And he has done it for us, this Jesus, the better one, who has crossed the finish line for us. And that now we can follow his lead and do the same. That one day, when we would cross that finish line, that we would hear said, well done, good and faithful servant. This author of Hebrews is so aware of the people they're writing this letter to. These readers that are in danger of growing weary and losing heart because every day they face persecution. Because every day they're facing threats. They're facing intimidation and mockery from friends. Maybe they've lost family who have disowned them because of them following this Jesus. And it's to this audience that the author of Hebrews writes this letter. It's as if they're saying, I know this part of your race is hard, right? I know this is the part where you're running up that hill and it's wet and it's slippery and it's tough. But you must remind yourselves of Jesus, the better one, of the one who has gone before you, so you will be kept from wearing out completely. And this is one of those places that it's fascinating to me as the Christian faith that we're not called by God to just conjure up feelings of, yeah, rah, rah, you can do it. That's not what God calls us to do. But he wants us to remind ourselves of truth, and that this Jesus who has done what he has done for us, to remind ourselves of this. This is a big deal. Because you and I, we are who we are because of our back in the days. Because of the foundation that was laid for us. Because of the ordinary people in our own lives who believed in an extraordinary God. And because of that, we can be part of this incredible move of God. As I mentioned to you, we've been watching these cross-country races, and it's funny, as I was kind of sitting in this passage this week, just thinking along the lines of a cross-country race, that you get going and you run and you want to throw off, you want to tie your shoes the right way, throw off things that hinder you. You don't want to eat a Little Debbie before the race, right? You don't want to down a Coke before, you want to be ready, right, to run that race that's marked out for you. And then as you get toward that finish line, it's a neat thing that happens at the end of these races, that everybody kind of stands around and they're just cheering. Right, here comes first place. Yay, way to go, first place. Here comes second place. Yay, way to go, second place. Third place, fourth place, fifth place. They're still there when the 70th kid comes running through that line. They're still there when the 150th kid comes struggling through that finish line. Those people are still there. Yay, way to go, way to go. You did it. This great cloud, if you will, of witnesses surrounding these folks as they run and complete their race. And there's a guy who he's actually a minister in Hiawassee. My kids go to Towns County, and he would come to almost all the local cross country meets. And this guy, he was a runner. He's a good dude. He'd come to this race. His kids weren't running. He'd just come to support the kids. And one of the first races this year, Lane, my oldest, he was trailing a teammate, and they had that epic mad dash to the finish line. To finish in the right, I think, third and fourth or something. And I asked Lane after the race, I was like, man, you really turned it on there at the end. I was like, what inspired you? He was like, well, that guy, and he didn't know who he was. He said, that guy, he told me, he said, hey, don't let that kid beat you. Don't let that kid beat you. Go get him. Go get him. Go get him. Go get him. And Lane took off. It was pretty cool to see. He took off. And he did catch him, which was cool. He didn't the rest of the year, but he did that time. And this guy, and I know this guy, again, he has no dog in the fight. He's just there encouraging those kids. And it's at the last pass, as they come to the end of their race, he's there. Come on. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Come on. You can do it. Oh, breathe. Are your shoes tied right? Go. Right? You can do it. You can do it. Did you shave off your body hair today? You can do it. You can do it. He's just encouraging them. You can do it. And this is what the author says you have. This great cloud of witnesses saying, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can make it. Run. Breathe. Go. You can run this race marked out for you. And I know it's going to be hard, the author says. I know it's going to be difficult. But when it gets hard, when it gets difficult, remember what Jesus has done for you. Don't magically try to conjure up feelings and put on your happy face and go about your week. Remember the truth of what Jesus has done for you. And then face your day. Not growing weary, not losing heart. And I want to end where we started this series. That Andrew in the first week used Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1, where the author says this: we must pay the most careful attention, therefore, to what we have heard, so we do not drift away. Right? So it's so easy to get distracted and to lose heart and to grow weary. The author of Hebrews would tell you Jesus is better, and what he has done for you can help you move forward. So run that race. Persevere. You can do it. You can do it. There's a great cloud of witnesses cheering you on. And so what we love to do at the end of these series is to give you something to hang on to, right? Something to inspire you, something to help you remember this Jesus, right, who has done this for you. And so I want to give you 3 ways as we wrap up today. And the first may be this, that maybe this week, I don't know what you're facing. I don't know what life situation you've got going on. I don't know what's looking at you right in the eyes and telling you time to grow weary, time to lose heart. I don't know what that is. But I want to encourage you to persevere. Maybe this week what you need to do is just sit on this passage, Hebrews 12, 1 through 3. Not literally, but figuratively, that you would sit with this all week and that you would rehearse this. God, I don't feel like I've got a great cloud of witnesses. I need you to help me experience that. God, I don't feel like throwing off everything that hinders the sin that so easily entangles. I need you to help me with that. Help me to focus on this Jesus and just go through this each day. Maybe you pray this passage this week. Maybe as you try to remember what Jesus has done for you, maybe you would go to a gospel account this week. I'd recommend you start either with Mark or you'd start with John. That's where a lot of folks will tend to spend some time, Mark or John, and just read about this Jesus and what he has done for you. And here's a trick as you walk through these gospel accounts. As Jesus is interacting with people, picture yourself as that person, right? When Jesus is interacting with the woman in the well, put yourself in her shoes. When Jesus is interacting with the rich young ruler, put yourself in their shoes and watch as Jesus deals with them so beautifully. And that's the same way he deals with us. And then lastly, I'd invite you to come remember this Jesus with us on our night of worship on Wednesday, October the 10th. That you would be here as we come together and as we share communion and we remind each other of this Jesus and what he's done for us. That you and I can persevere because of who he is and what he's done. And we have this great cloud of witnesses cheering us on. So this week, as you stare down whatever it is you're staring down, may you know that you have an incredible cheering section in heaven and in here and here. You can do this. You can do it, right? Because of what Jesus has done, that we can do it. May you persevere this week so you won't grow weary and you won't lose heart. Keeping Jesus in front every step of the way. Let's pray together.